Okay, we're back. All right, one last thing, and then I promise we're gonna actually get to the swords. However, this is another really important thing, and that is shoulders and shoulder health. As fencers, it is imperative that we care for our shoulders. Shoulder injuries are not uncommon in our field, but there are a few key things that we can bear in mind. First, just as we have external and internal rotation of the hips, so have we with the shoulders. So, demonstrate internal versus external rotation of the shoulders. Without arms straight. Yep, palms in, hands open. Bend at the elbows. If I take my elbows and I bring them outside of the body, that is internal rotation. If I take the elbows and I bring them towards each other, or I bring the hands to the outside, that is external rotation. And you can observe this from about 135 degrees. And then with arms straight. Notice I'm not turning my wrists, I'm turning the entire arm from the shoulder. And if I arm out to the side, you can see what that looks like. Again, this is not a movement from the wrist, this is a movement from the shoulder. So what internal rotation and external rotation of the shoulders mean for us? Externally rotated shoulders are shoulders that are in a strong position. The shoulder joint is a complex one. It is not locked in the socket the way the hips are. Instead, it relies on the surrounding muscles and ligaments to keep it together. The ball that's at the end of the humerus just kind of sits in this in the gleneus. The joint itself is called the glenohumeral joint, and it's a shallow dish in which the shoulder sits. I mean, some people, myself included, just have weird shoulders that can just kind of like pop out of the socket here and there. That was, you can see, freaky, right? It's gross, and I'm just gonna put that away. You don't have to. It's not really gross at all. It is perfectly fine. And if your shoulders do something like that, it doesn't mean you have to stop fencing. It just means that you have to be really mindful of those shoulders. You need to stay on top of your shoulder health, and you need to be extra mindful of all of the things that we're going to discuss here. I had a rotator cuff injury on the shoulder, partially because of this ligamentous laxity that I have, that took ultimately the better part of a year to fully recover from and to improve from where I started. But this, getting back to here, right. So when we hold something like a sword and rotate our shoulders internally, a couple of things happen. And first thing that happens when we rotate internally is the scapula, the shoulder blade, tends to wing, or it tends to stick out. See that I'm exaggerating it here, but you see how it's sort of sticking out there. When our scapulae wing, we're producing conditions similar to holding the sword with a bent wrist. It is, as a result, the entire weight of the sword is borne by the muscles immediately surrounding the shoulder joint and a little more. This does not even begin to account for the stresses placed on the joint that we experience while fencing. Prolonged Prolonged training with habits such as these can result in nerve impingement, tendinitis, bursitis, and other ailments of the shoulder joint. Again, this winging up of the scapula, it is something that some of you might experience. It is, and these are all things that can be worked on, and that's what we're going to talk about. When we rotate externally, however, something else happens. So from here, from internal rotation, wing scapula. When we rotate externally, however, that winging goes away, and the scapula hugs the rib cage the way it's supposed to. What's happening there is, by doing that, we are recruiting serratus anterior. Serratus anterior is that kind of sawtooth muscle that you see boxers have SA really well developed, and it's responsible for taking the shoulder blade and pulling it tight to the rib cage, which connects everything from here down to everything from here down. Right, with the scapulae pulled into the rib cage, the weight being transferred in the arms is transferred throughout the posterior chain. So check this out. From here, I have shoulders are externally rotated, and I'm holding up the sword, and all of the weight of the sword is right here. When I rotate externally, however, first of all, you see that I go from this kind of cat back to the neutral spine that we had talked about. Now all of this weight is transferring through my body, and I am supporting the weight of the weapon, as well as potentially the weight of my opponent against my weapon, through the entirety of my posterior chain. The posterior chain is the series of muscles that make up the rear side of your body. Again, extremely strong series of muscles. And external rotation connects us to this. And where are we? We are actually at the end. Every so often, ask yourself where your shoulder blades are. If you find that one or both shoulders are starting to get hunched up, that probably also means you're gripping the sword too tight. Take a step back. Relax, loosen your grip. Bring the shoulder blades down and back. That is another cue you're going to hear me say a lot. Down and back, down and back, down and back. Internal rotation, external rotation. If I have the sword out in front of me, suppose I'm at the end of a cut, and right, all of a sudden my tip's hitting the floor. Now my posture keeps the sword from hitting the floor. My posture keeps everything in line. All of my body parts are working together to put the sword in a position that makes sense for the sword. Next video, we finally get to sword stuff. So, I'll see you shortly.